At the galaxy's most elite military academy, Instructor Thaler demanded perfection, a blade forged from the finest resonant alloy. But when the human cadet Anya Voss ignored the advanced forges and began sharpening a crude fossilized bone, the entire class erupted in laughter and disgust. They called it primitive. They called it weak. Until the deadliest combat simulation in the galaxy proved them all wrong, in the most terrifying way possible. Before we dive deeper into the story, please subscribe. It costs you nothing but helps stellar HFY a lot in the towering spires of the Imperial Apex Academy, where the galaxy's elite warriors were sculpted into legends. Instructor Thaler commanded absolute respect. A towering Crixery with obsidian exoskeleton and 4 piercing crimson eyes, he embodied unyielding perfection. His people had dominated the stars through flawless engineering and resonant alloys that hummed with quantum precision. Today, his advanced combat class would undertake their most revered ritual, forging a personal blade from the Academy's sacred vibrosteel. Perfection is not an ideal, Thaler's voice boomed through the forge chamber, deep and resonant like grinding tectonic plates. It is survival. Any compromise is death. Begin. The students sprang into action under the searing plasma forges. Vayari nobles channeled pure energy into elegant, singing blades. A massive Grothak warrior infused seismic resonance into his weapon, making the floor tremble. Gleaming masterpieces emerged one after another, flawless, lethal, humming with power. Whispers of awe and rivalry filled the air. Then came the anomaly. Cadet Anya Voss, the sole human in the program, ignored every advanced station. She walked straight to the discard pit at the chamber's edge, where ancient fossils from conquered primitive worlds lay forgotten. Her slender fingers dug through the dust and pulled out a long, fossilized bone, gray, ugly, riddled with cracks and mineral deposits from some long-extinct beast. A stunned silence fell, quickly shattered by mocking laughter. Thaler's mandibles clicked sharply. Cadet Voss. Explain this. Mockery. Anya straightened, meeting his 4 glowing eyes with calm defiance. Her green eyes showed no fear. The assignment was to forge a blade, Instructor. I chose my material. The chamber erupted. A Vayari cadet sneered, the weakling human brings a stick to a war academy. Thaler loomed over her, his shadow swallowing her small frame. This is an insult to every tradition we hold sacred. You will use the vibrosteel forge or face immediate expulsion. Anya didn't back down. Your perfect alloys have failed in real crises before, so history favors what survives, not what shines. She sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor and pulled out a rough whetstone she had specially requested. No plasma. No resonance tech. Just raw, patient scraping. The tension in the forge became suffocating. Every scrape of bone against stone echoed like a challenge to centuries of Crixery superiority. Other students finished their radiant blades in elegant hours. Anya worked relentlessly as the cycle dragged on, late into the artificial night. The fossil slowly transformed under her hands into a crude, serrated weapon, uneven, primitive, almost savage. By session's end, the contrast was grotesque. A line of shimmering, humming masterpieces stood proudly. At the far end lay Anya's bone blade, dull and dead by comparison. Thaler approached, his voice low and dangerous. Tomorrow, the adaptive swarm simulation will expose your arrogance, human. Every drone is designed to study and neutralize perfection itself. Your relic will shatter like brittle glass in seconds. I will enjoy watching it. Anya wiped a trace of dust from the blade and looked up. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips. Then we'll discover what truly breaks when everything changes. As the class filed out, the whispers turned venomous. Bets were placed, not on her survival, but on how quickly and humiliatingly she would fail. Thaler remained behind, staring at the bone blade. An unfamiliar unease stirred in his chest. He crushed it immediately. Humans were chaotic newcomers. This one would be corrected harshly. Yet deep in the Academy's restricted logs, an unnoticed entry appeared. Cadet Voss had accessed paleontological data on the fossil species, an apex predator that had survived multiple extinction-level events through sheer adaptability. That night, while the Academy slept, Anya sat alone in her quarters. She ran her thumb carefully along the fresh edge, drawing a thin line of blood. Her eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. "Old survivor," she whispered to the bone, "it's time to remind the galaxy why the dead still hunt." The simulation arena awaited. A place where perfection itself would be tested to destruction. Thaler retired confident in the outcome. He had no idea the real test had already begun. The observation deck buzzed with electric anticipation as the class gathered for the adaptive swarm simulation. The vast dome arena below shimmered with holographic projectors, ready to turn thought into lethal reality. Thaler stood like a statue of judgment, his 4 eyes scanning the cadets. "The swarm learns," he announced gravely. "It studies your weapon, your movements, your very biology. It evolves to counter strength. Only true superiority endures. Begin the trials." One by one, the elite students entered. The Vayari Noble's plasma blade performed beautifully at first, carving through the initial drone wave with surgical grace. Cheers erupted. Then the swarm adapted, shifting frequencies, hardening in real time. The perfect blade bounced uselessly. The cadet was cut down in under a minute. The Grothack's seismic masterpiece fared even worse. It cracked the battlefield dramatically, but the swarm flowed like liquid metal, reforming and striking from blind angles. Failure mounted with each trial. Thaler's pride twisted into visible frustration. His sacred teachings were being dismantled before his eyes. Finally, the announcement echoed, "Cadet Anya Voss." She stepped into the arena carrying nothing but her crude bone blade strapped tightly to her forearm. No energy shields. No tactical armor upgrades. Just standard fatigues and quiet determination. Derisive laughter exploded across the observation deck. Thaler activated the simulation with a sharp gesture. "Begin." The swarm materialized instantly, sleek, black drones swarming like angry hornets. Real-time data flooded the screens: material, organic fossil. Structural integrity, poor. Projected survival time, 43 seconds. Anya didn't charge heroically. She waited, crouched low, grounded in a stance that looked almost primitive compared to the elegant forms taught at the academy. The first wave attacked. A drone lunged. Her bone blade met it with a dull, ugly crack. Instead of shattering, the serrated fossil edge caught in a mechanical joint. She twisted with savage force. Sparks flew as ancient mineral ground mercilessly through synthetic alloy. The drone spasmed and died. Laughter died in the deck. Suspense replaced it. Wave after wave came faster. The swarm adjusted, generating microvibrations specifically tuned to shatter bone. Anya should have been overwhelmed. Yet every impact seemed to work in her favor, the fossil's natural fractures creating fresh, razor-sharp edges instead of weakening it. She fought like a cornered predator, rolling through dust clouds, using the environment, jamming the crude blade into sensor ports where elegant swords couldn't reach. Thaler's mandibles tightened. "This is impossible. The material is inert. Dead." Anya was bleeding now, shallow cuts across her arms and side, but she pressed forward relentlessly. Her breathing grew ragged. The swarm's behavior began to shift noticeably, its algorithms struggling, looping in confusion as they tried to categorize the unpredictable relic. Tension reached a breaking point when the massive prime drone descended. Towering and heavily armored, it had been specifically calibrated against all known vibrosteel frequencies. It loomed over the small human like certain death. The entire observation deck fell into breathless silence. Thaler gripped the railing until his claws scraped metal. This was the moment. The human would finally break. Anya looked up at the monstrous machine, blood trickling down her face. For a split second, fear flickered in her eyes, then it hardened into something ancient and fierce. She charged straight at it. The prime drone's blades extended with lethal speed. The class watched in horrified fascination as the human girl with her dead bone weapon threw herself into a battle that should have ended in seconds. The air crackled with unbearable suspense. Thaler's rigid worldview trembled on the edge of something catastrophic. And the swarm roared down for the kill. The prime drone descended like a harbinger of doom, its obsidian chassis pulsing with adaptive energy shields. Towering twice Anya's height, its multiple blades hummed with frequencies engineered to shred any known alloy. In the observation deck, the entire class held their collective breath. Thaler's 4 crimson eyes were locked onto the arena, his massive frame rigid with anticipation. Anya charged. Her small, bloodied form looked pitiful against the mechanical titan. The Prime Drone's primary blade swept down in a blurring arc. She twisted at the last heartbeat, the edge slicing across her shoulder instead of decapitating her. Scarlet blood sprayed across the holographic ground. A cry of pain escaped her lips, raw and human, but she didn't stop. Foolish, Thaler muttered, though his voice lacked its usual certainty. The swarm's secondary drones swarmed in from all sides. Anya moved with desperate, primal grace, no elegant academy forms, only the raw survival instincts of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through ice, fire, and extinction. She ducked under a slashing limb and drove Old Tooth upward into a joint seam the Prime had left exposed, believing her primitive weapon incapable of harm. The fossilized bone struck with a sickening crunch. Instead of bouncing off, the serrated edge bit deep, tearing through synthetic muscle fibers and wiring. Ancient mineral deposits ground against circuitry, creating chaotic sparks and feedback loops the swarm's algorithms couldn't process. Alarms screamed across the observation deck. Disruption detected, a technician shouted. The weapon is generating unpredictable harmonic interference. The swarm can't model it. Thaler's mandibles clicked rapidly. Recalibrate immediately. Overwhelm her. More drones poured into the arena. Anya was a whirlwind of blood and fury now. Her left arm hung limp, blood soaking her fatigues, yet she fought on with terrifying determination. Every time the swarm adapted, hardening armor, shifting frequencies, Old Tooth's natural imperfections created new advantages. A fresh fracture in the bone birthed a sharper point. A porous section absorbed and redirected vibrational energy that would have shattered a perfect blade. The tension was unbearable. Cadets who had mocked her earlier now leaned forward, silent, fists clenched. The mockery had evaporated, replaced by stunned disbelief and growing awe. Anya stumbled as a drone slashed her thigh. She dropped to one knee, breathing in ragged gasps. The Prime drone sensed victory and reared back for the finishing strike, its core processor glowing with triumphant red light. In the deck, Thaler felt an unfamiliar twist in his chest, not triumph, but something perilously close to dread. The human was supposed to fail. Her defeat was meant to reinforce everything he believed. Instead, she was rewriting reality. With a guttural scream that echoed through the entire dome, Anya surged upward. She leaped onto the Prime drone's descending arm, using its own momentum against it. Old Tooth plunged straight into the vulnerable eye sensor cluster. The fossil blade cracked loudly under the pressure, but held. Microparticles of ancient silica and compressed collagen exploded outward like shrapnel, scrambling the Prime's neural matrix in a cascading failure. The colossal machine convulsed violently. Its shields flickered and died. Secondary drones began dropping from the air, systems fried by the chaotic resonance. Anya clung on, driving the blade deeper even as her own strength faded. Blood dripped from her chin. Her vision blurred. Then, with one final, violent shudder, the entire swarm collapsed. Silence crashed over the arena. Anya slid off the ruined Prime drone and collapsed to her knees in the center of the battlefield, Old Tooth still gripped tightly in her trembling hand. The once mighty weapon was heavily fractured now, yet it had endured where perfection failed. The observation deck erupted. Not in jeers, but in thunderous, disbelieving applause. Some cadets were standing. Others stared in open-mouthed shock. Thaler remained frozen at the railing. His worldview, built on centuries of Crixery supremacy and the gospel of perfection, lay in shattered pieces at his feet. A single human with a dead bone had just humiliated the Academy's greatest simulation. Medical teams rushed in. Thaler descended into the arena himself, his heavy footsteps echoing. Anya looked up at him through pain-glazed eyes, her face pale but defiant. "Still believe it's primitive, instructor?" she whispered hoarsely. Thaler had no answer. The medical wing hummed with urgent activity as doctors stabilized Anya. Thaler stood outside the observation window, his towering shadow stretching across the corridor. Inside, The human cadet lay bandaged, pale, yet alive. The bone blade, Old Tooth, rested on a nearby tray, its fractured surface catching the light in strange, almost mesmerizing patterns. Word of the victory had already spread like wildfire through the Imperial Apex Academy. Students from other classes gathered in excited clusters. Traditionalist instructors whispered in outrage. Thaler's own reputation, once ironclad, now stood on uncertain ground. Later that cycle, the lecture hall crackled with tension. Thaler addressed the class, attempting to regain control. Cadet Vasa's anomaly does not invalidate our core principles. Perfection remains the pinnacle. What occurred today was a statistical outlier born of desperation and luck. His words rang hollow. Anya, seated at the back with bandages visible beneath her uniform, spoke up quietly but firmly. Luck had nothing to do with it, instructor. That bone belonged to an apex predator that survived 6 mass extinction events on my world. Its imperfections, cracks, mineral inclusions, porous structure, were what allowed it to endure when stronger bones shattered. Your perfect blades break when reality deviates. This one adapts because it was forged by chaos itself. The hall fell into heavy silence. Thaler's 4 eyes narrowed. After the session, he summoned her to a private training chamber. "Show me," he demanded. "Prove this was not a fluke." What followed was a tense, dramatic bout. Thaler activated a squadron of elite training drones and wielded his own flawless vibrosteel blade. He attacked with masterful precision, strikes that could fell starship armor. Anya, still injured and moving slower, fought with raw cunning. Old Tooth found gaps no elegant weapon could exploit. It jammed mechanisms. It created grinding friction that overheated perfect systems. In a heart-stopping moment, she disarmed Thaler with a clever twist, sending his prized blade clattering across the floor. The instructor stared at his empty hands in disbelief. The hidden observation feed captured every second. Word spread further. That night, Thaler confronted his own biases in the quiet of his quarters. He replayed the simulation logs repeatedly. The data was irrefutable. The fossil's irregular lattice had created unpredictable resonances that collapsed the swarm's adaptive matrix. Perfection had been its weakness. The next day brought more drama. A senior Crixery champion challenged Anya publicly. The bout drew a massive crowd. Tension thickened the air as the two fought in a smaller arena. The champion's blade sang beautifully. Anya bled again. Yet she endured, turning every aggressive mistake by her opponent into an opening. Old Tooth struck true in the final moments, forcing a yield. Thaler watched from the front row, his rigid beliefs fracturing deeper with every clash. In a private moment afterward, he approached Anya as she cleaned the bone blade. "Explain it all," he said, voice low. "I need to understand." She did. For hours, she displayed paleontological scans, historical records of human ingenuity, and the harsh lessons of a species that rose through bone, stone, and fire rather than perfect alloys. Thaler listened in silence, his 4 eyes reflecting an internal storm. By the end, he spoke words he never thought possible. "My people built this academy believing refinement equals supremacy. You have shown me that refinement can become a cage." Anya met his gaze steadily. "When the perfect plan fails, instructor, sometimes the deadliest answer is the one that refuses to die." The reckoning had only begun. Traditionalists were mobilizing against the human heresy, while progressive voices whispered of necessary change. Thaler stood at the center of the growing storm, torn between loyalty to his culture and the undeniable truth delivered by a single human girl and her ancient bone blade. The academy would never be the same. Part 5. Trials of Heresy. The victory in the adaptive swarm simulation sent shockwaves through the Imperial Apex Academy. What began as a single cadet's defiance had become something far more dangerous, an idea. Traditionalist Crixery instructors gathered in shadowed halls, decrying the human heresy that threatened centuries of doctrine. Whispers of disciplinary hearings and even expulsion filled the corridors. Yet support for Anya grew in equal measure. Cadets from lesser species who had always felt the weight of perfection's impossible standard now looked to her with hope. Thaler found himself at the eye of the storm. His rigid beliefs, once his greatest strength, now felt like chains. He watched from the command balcony as Anya faced challenger after challenger in the training arenas. Each bout grew more brutal and suspenseful than the last. The first major trial came against Master Instructor Varric, a legendary Crixery duelist whose vibrosteel blade had never known defeat in Academy records. The arena was packed. The air crackled with tension as the two combatants faced each other. Varric's blade hummed with pure resonant power, glowing with lethal elegance. "You rely on a corpse, human," Varric snarled. "I will show you the price of insulting perfection." The duel erupted in a blur of motion. Varric attacked with overwhelming precision, strikes calculated to end fights in seconds. Anya, still recovering from her wounds, bled from reopened cuts within the first minute. The crowd gasped as she barely dodged a decapitating slash. Old Tooth seemed pitiful against the singing blade, yet every time Varric overcommit, the bone found impossible angles. It jammed Varric's wrist servos. It created grinding, chaotic friction that made the perfect weapon overheat and falter. The suspense peaked when Varric unleashed his signature resonance cascade. The arena floor trembled. Anya was thrown back, blood spraying from her nose. For a terrifying moment, she lay still. Thaler's hearts clenched, part of him still wanted her to fail, to restore the natural order. But Anya rose. With a fierce cry, she closed the distance in a reckless charge and drove Old Tooth straight into the hilt of Varric's blade where the energy coupling sat. The fossil's imperfections shattered the resonance matrix. Varric's weapon exploded in a shower of sparks. The master instructor dropped to his knees in defeat. The crowd roared. More challenges followed. Each victory added to the legend but drained Anya further. Thaler visited her in the medical wing after the third brutal bout. She looked frail, covered in fresh bandages, yet her eyes burned with unyielding fire. "You're killing yourself to prove a point," Thaler said, voice heavy. "I'm proving it because no one else can," Anya replied. "Your culture worships perfection until the universe throws the unexpected at you. Then everything breaks. My people learned that lesson the hard way, on battlefields, in frozen wastelands, against extinction itself." Thaler's 4 eyes darkened. He spent the night studying forbidden human historical archives. The more he learned, the deeper the fractures in his soul grew. The climax of the trials arrived with the announcement of the Grand Review, an elite exhibition watched by galactic dignitaries, military commanders, and even members of the Imperial Council. Thaler made the controversial decision to nominate Anya as the Academy's representative. Outrage exploded. Traditionalists demanded his resignation. In the tense hours before the event, Thaler confronted Anya in a private chamber. "They have modified the simulation. It has studied every move you made. The swarm has evolved anti-chaos protocols, frequency dampeners, and specific counters to fossil materials. They want you to fail publicly." Anya strapped Old Tooth to her arm, now reinforced with minimal medical resin but still fundamentally primitive. "Then I'll just have to be more unpredictable." Thaler placed a heavy hand on her shoulder, a gesture of respect no Crixery instructor had ever shown a human. "Whatever happens, you have already changed me." The arena doors opened. Galactic elites filled the stands. Holographic cameras broadcast live across the Empire. The pressure was suffocating. Anya stepped into the light as the modified swarm began to materialize, darker, smarter, and hungry for revenge. The Grand Review arena pulsed with raw energy. Thousands of dignitaries watched in tense silence as the modified adaptive swarm materialized in waves more vicious than any simulation before. Anti-chaos algorithms glowed across the drones. Frequency dampeners hummed, ready to neutralize Old Tooth's chaotic resonance. The swarm had been rebuilt specifically to crush the human and her primitive weapon. Anya stood alone at the center, bloodied from previous trials, yet radiating quiet defiance. Thaler watched from the command booth, claws digging into the railing. This was no longer just a test of one cadet, it was a referendum on everything the Academy stood for. The swarm attacked. Drones came faster and smarter. Anya dodged and weaved, her movements a raw blend of Academy training and Earth's brutal survival arts. Old Tooth struck true again and again, but the new dampeners weakened its effect. Sparks flew less dramatically. The bone began cracking under sustained punishment. Blood flowed freely from fresh wounds across her body. The crowd murmured. Traditionalists smiled with vindication. Thalos' hearts pounded. "Hold on, Anya," he whispered. She fought like a cornered predator. When a cluster of drones pinned her against the wall, she used the environment, slamming one drone into another, driving Old Tooth through a weakened joint at a precise angle only her deep study of the fossil allowed. The kill count climbed, but so did her exhaustion. A devastating strike from a prime drone sent her tumbling. She coughed blood. Suspense gripped the entire arena. Many believed the end had come. Anya rose once more. Her face was a mask of pain and fury. She looked directly toward Thalos' booth, their eyes meeting across the chaos. In that moment, something profound passed between instructor and student, respect forged in fire, understanding born from shattered pride. With a primal scream that echoed through the dome, Anya launched herself into the heart of the swarm. She ignored defense entirely, becoming a whirlwind of desperate, calculated strikes. Old Tooth fractured further with every impact, each new break creating deadlier edges. The anti-chaos protocols began to fail as the bone's imperfections proved too random, too ancient, too alive with Earth's unforgiving history. The final colossal behemoth descended, the swarm's ultimate adaptation. It towered over her, armor impervious to standard resonance, algorithms locked onto her every pattern. Anya charged straight at it. She leaped onto its descending arm, scaling the machine with bleeding hands. Drones tore at her from all sides. In a heart-stopping climax, she drove the heavily fractured Old Tooth directly into the behemoth's central neural core. The blade shattered completely in a brilliant explosion of ancient minerals and fossilized fury. The particle cascade was devastating. The behemoth froze, then convulsed violently. A chain reaction ripped through the entire swarm network. One by one, the drones plummeted from the air. Silence fell. Anya collapsed amid the wreckage, surrounded by shards of her broken blade. The arena remained deathly quiet for 3 long seconds, then erupted in the loudest roar the Academy had ever witnessed. Even many traditionalists rose to their feet in stunned respect. Thaler descended into the arena and personally helped Anya to her feet, supporting her weight before the entire galactic audience. Medical teams swarmed, but the moment belonged to them. "You have broken more than machines today," Thaler announced, his voice broadcast across the stars. "You have shattered our illusions of perfection. This human has reminded us that true power often hides in imperfection, in history, in resilience." In the weeks that followed, the Academy transformed. New doctrines emerged blending Crixery precision with adaptive, human-inspired thinking. Old Tooth shards were enshrined in the central hall as a sacred relic. Anya graduated with highest honors, her name etched into legend. One quiet evening, Thaler visited her before she departed for her first command. He held a single preserved shard of the bone blade. "I was wrong," he said simply. "Perfection is a destination. Resilience is the journey. Thank you for teaching an old fool what true strength looks like." Anya smiled weakly. "The dead still bite, instructor. Never forget that." As she left for the stars, Thaler stood watching, the shard warm in his hand. The Empire had been forever changed by one human girl who dared to sharpen a piece of bone. Subscribe.